Hey everyone, welcome to Expansive Astrology. I'm Melissa O'Malley, and we are entering Scorpio season, week 2. So this week I share with you the tarot cards that are associated with Scorpio, because the tarot can really be just such an excellent framework for us to help understand these energies better. The tarot helps us understand what Scorpio is bringing to the table a little more, and we get to really just evaluate how we hang out in this stuff. Now, this stuff specifically, Scorpio season's stuff is pretty intense. It's pretty intense. We've got the Death card. Argo. It's gonna attack my kitty cat. We've got the Death card, we've got the Tower card, Judgment card. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Suit of Cups because Scorpio is a water sign and the cups represent the water element. But this is some intense shit. Scorpio is an intense energy. This is some intense shit today. So caretake yourselves around that. This can be some, like, these are intense topics talking about, and when I'm talking about like death, I'm not necessarily talking about physical death or the losses that we've experienced, and it can mean that sometimes, and we're talking about grief and loss and letting go and shedding, dying. We're talking about death. It can be really intense. So just know that going into it, be really gentle with yourself as we explore this, and let's just get going. So the Death card does not necessarily represent physical death. If you pull this card, it doesn't mean you're going to die or somebody you love is going to die, right? It can come up around grief, around physical, real death, but this doesn't necessarily mean the loss of a job or a divorce, anything like that. It can mean that. It can, and it doesn't necessarily mean that. That is not the full picture of what death is. Death is a lot more than that. And let me just take this moment to, I always want to name this, that I use Soul-Centered Tarot, taught by Lindsay Mack. Mostly, I in addition to some other books that I've read and my own inner knowing, my own intuition, my own experience with these cards, but it's really important that I always give credit where credit is due. I know most of what I know from Soul-Centered Tarot, and I really appreciate Soul-Centered Tarot, and I highly recommend Soul-Centered Tarot. So let me name that. So the Death card represents sacred transition from one state of being to another. Okay, this is the energy that supports us in letting go of what doesn't work for us or what doesn't match for us anymore, so that we can more accurately answer the question, like, who am I? What does work for me? Where am I supposed to be? Right? Because with death comes rebirth. Pretty much always. When we shed what no longer works for us, we're better left to work with and to be with what does work for us. When we allow what is dead to become fertilizer, when we allow what is dead to add to the compost pile, our garden grows bigger and stronger. And we spend so much time, often, most of us, in many scenarios, spend so much time and energy holding on to things that once were ours, or that we feel like should still be ours, or just things that are easy, or it's easier to hold on to some of these things than to let go and let die, right? Sometimes it's easier. And by doing that, by not cutting those cords, by not allowing things to die, by not putting things into the fertilizer, we're denying ourselves significant growth that can happen. Right? So we're invited to experience some acceptance and some empowerment around death. And that acceptance and that empowerment does not necessarily mean that we don't grieve. Of course we grieve. We get to move through and experience a whole array of feelings when we experience death or loss or change or rebirth, right? We grieve deeply and fully, and it can feel impossible to move through, to get past sometimes. It can feel impossible. And I'm going to say again, like, we experience that. This is not about not having that horrible, painful, heartbreaking experience. That level of grief and heartbreak is included in this. And that level of grief and heartbreak and pain and just messiness is included in the rebirth, the rebirthing that can happen. We recognize that with death comes birth. With death, transformation comes, and we shift from one state of being into another. So this energy asks us, ask yourself, consider this, what are you complete with? What needs to go? What do we need to release that's no longer a match for us? What are you complete with? Even if you don't want to be complete with it, or even if it feels like if you were to let go of that, you would die. What are you complete with? What does your brain and your ego need to let go of in order to allow that to shed, in order to allow a shedding of what needs to go? And this includes a whole lot of ego work, right? There's a serious releasing of the ego and like relaxing of the brain. The word relaxing didn't quite fit, but like there's a surrender that has to happen with the ego. There's a serious releasing that happens when we shed a former life. So I'd like to quote my tarot teacher, Lindsay Mack, here directly because she said it beautifully. I could never say it better. Quote, Lindsay says, quote, "It is saying if there are things in this stage of your life or this stage of experience that you are releasing, that are not being lost, that are being uprooted from your garden, they're not gone. They're now available to help what is ready to grow. How can we love if we haven't known what it is to love and potentially lose someone? We don't lose our ability to love if we have a breakup or we lose somebody that we love. The memory or capacity to love and receive love is actually what helps to nourish our future relationships. It in no way minimizes any of the grief that we may be experiencing." Unquote. I love the way she says that, because when we lose something like a relationship, it can feel like we've lost. It can feel like I'll never love again, right? And that's not what happens. We still have that love, and we still have that capacity to love. And in fact, it may even be strengthened by potentially losing something, right? And this doesn't necessarily help. Knowing like, oh, I'll probably love again is not like, that doesn't help, right? At least not in those moments, right? But it's so important to acknowledge the entire process that happens when we experience a loss or a death like that. The whole experience of, I am grieving. It feels like I will never love again. It feels like a part of me has died with this. And that is all valid. And that is all, important to be with and look at and honor. And knowing that what is, I hate to sound tropey, but knowing that what is truly yours will never be lost. So let's talk some of the symbolism on the card. We've got the armor on this being telling us that death is a knight. And knight energy is the energy that brings movement and messages, invitations and release. There's a white flower on the flag, which symbolizes rebirth. I think the white horse also is a symbol of rebirth. And then we have the crown falling off this head, which is a symbol, it symbolizes releasing the ego. Lots of, and the sun is rising in the background, representing like a new day and more rebirth. So even within the death card, we see symbolism of rebirth. It's so important to hold. So that's the death card in a nutshell. Now let's talk Tower. In my experience, like when I'm talking to people, it seems like people fear the Tower card much more than the death card. People do not like the Tower card. I have found a great allyship with the Tower card. The Tower card has really prepared me in some ways. It's really helped me. So let's get into it. The Tower card is ruled by Mars, which rules Scorpio, which is why we're even talking about it here. The Tower is here to bring down and clear out anything that was built on a shaky foundation. When we're carrying something that is no longer meant for us, it has to go. It absolutely will go, no matter how good or stable that tower looked, no matter how long you spent on it, on building that tower. If it is built on unsound foundation, it will come down, like it or not. This energy shakes us to our core and is often greatly feared. And really, it's a massive liberation. It should be seen as a massive liberation. So I totally honor the fear that so often comes along with this card when we're talking about this card. And don't get so caught up in the event of the tower that you miss what the tower is actually doing. The event of the tower is not what it's actually all about. All right, any structure that we have built on unsound foundation that we're wary of taking down for ourselves for whatever reason, the tower will come in and remove that structure for us. That's why it's so fear-inducing for our human selves, our human brains, is because most often the tower comes in around something that we wouldn't do for ourselves. We wouldn't want this. We wouldn't make this choice. We like the tower. We've been building this tower, living in this tower, putting paint and repairs over the flaws and defects in the tower for years. We've been working on this tower for a really long time. It's not normally something we would choose for ourselves to lose. So it doesn't have to be, again, like the death card, it doesn't have to be a card of events like divorce or losing your job or getting in a car crash or anything like that. Not at all. It can include those things, and it's much more than that. Major breakdowns in a fight and fights can occur and can be tower, but that's not what it's like about. Really, it's about clearing out those things that hold us back, those things that we can't possibly carry on with us. It's those things that need to get the fuck out of the way so that we can work on what is happening with this foundation. So we can work on the foundation. What needs to go will come down. And this doesn't mean everything in the tower, everything that our tower was built upon and that was built of was a lie. It just means that we've been building these structures, whether very intentionally or kind of subconsciously, we've been building structures upon a foundation that was not fit or sound for the structures we've constructed there. Again, it doesn't mean that all that we've built and all that was built upon was a lie. But it shows us that at one point we weren't really able to tend to that foundation and that soil. And now, apparently, we must be ready. It just shows us like we've been building upon foundation that when we got started, we weren't ready to tend to this. And you can be sure, apparently, right? Apparently, now we're ready to look at this foundation. Now we're ready to look at this. We're ready to be here. You can know that for sure. Anytime we're in tower energy, even if you feel totally inequipped to deal with what's going on, please remind yourself that apparently, you know, this is happening. So apparently I do have enough to deal with this. Apparently the universe wants me to be looking at this right here, right now. So I must be ready for it, no matter how unready you may feel. The tower only comes around when we're ready for it. So like it or not, you can know that you must be ready to tend to the soil, because that's all we really can do once our tower has been struck by lightning and destroyed, right? That's all we really can do, is to be in the rubble, clean it up. So we can know that when we're in tower energy, we're ready to be where we are. We are equipped to handle this disaster, whether it feels like it or not, whether this is what you would have chosen for yourself or not. So the invitation in the tower energy is to take a deeper look at the roots deep within the soil underneath where the structure once existed. I want to say again, like, don't get so caught up in the fact that the tower was just struck by lightning that you miss that opportunity, right? What feelings and beliefs and patterns were contributing to the architecture of the tower? Who helped you build it? Was it built intentionally, or was this kind of like a subconscious tower that went up and you kind of didn't even know? What deep-seated root systems exist underneath the surface that need to be tended to right now? Challenge yourself to look beyond the event of the tower to see what really exists underneath. This is about, is this about the end of your relationship? Or is it really about recognizing your sexuality? I think is the example from Soul Centered Tarot. Is this about an argument that you're having with your parents? Or is this actually about doing some work around healing your inner child? Right? So like, that is such a fucking important key. Don't get so caught up in the event of the tower. Don't get so caught up and distraught by the argument with your parents that you miss that opportunity to do some healing work with your inner child. Brilliant. So again, brilliant work can be done with that. So the tower is not about the event. It's so much more about what lays beneath the surface. So some symbolism on this card. It's a scary card. The lightning, which is a force of nature that hits suddenly and without warning. And directly, there's like an arrow in it. It's very direct. Again, we see the crown coming off the head. Where is it? Oh, the head of the tower. Signifying the release of something egoic that is no longer serving. And we also see these two beings leaping from the building, signifying a surrender to the blast rather than the alternative, which would be like them trying to stand their ground in the tower, right? They're leaping to save their lives. This guy's got a cape. So that's the tower. And hopefully looking at it this way, I mean, again, this is not about not experiencing pain or grief or a whole lot of shit. This is about experiencing all of that fully and wholly and knowing that it's all part of the process. It's all part of the process of this human life. So judgment. Ruled by Pluto, which is why we're talking about it. Pluto rules Scorpio. So Pluto is all about uncovering shit that is meant to be seen, right? This is where we really rebirth. Those times where the second the blindfold comes off, we know we will never be the same again. That's judgment. Judgment calls us to step away from anything that's untrue, anything that's false, any delusions or illusions in our brain. It's an awakening. In judgment, we're pulling the blindfold off and taking a deep look at those things that are not in alignment for us, those things that are not true for us, so that we can evolve, so that we can move throughout our lives without a blindfold, with more clarity, so that we can, it's an opportunity to look at the ways that we are perpetuating our own bad cycles, to look at where our potential to change things really lies. So this is the final card before we reach resolution in the world. This is the final card before the final card in the major arcana. This energy asks us to look with honesty and clarity. Where are you? Where have you come from? How many deaths have you died? In what ways are you ready to transcend and let go and evolve into the next best thing? What are you still holding on to that may be untrue or unfair or holding you back from evolving into a higher state of being? What systems and beliefs and feelings and patterns are holding you back from this sacred rebirthing process? What are you refusing to let die? This is like that final look at what are you refusing to let die. When we're talking about judgment, I like to consider the opposite, non-judgment. Our brains were built to judge, right? They like to see things in terms of black and white. And in some ways, life is more comfortable that way. I talk a lot more about black and white and grayness in Libra season, week 4, I believe. In some ways, the brain is much more comfortable seeing things in black and white. The brain has a million ways of analyzing things and placing them into categories, usually very black and white categories. I like this, I don't like that. I accept this, I don't accept that. I've seen this before. I know what's going to happen. Like emergency, I've never experienced this before. This is different. Very strategic, very presumptuous, and often unwavering if it goes unchecked. Our brains do this all day, every day, usually without a second thought from us, right? And this is a good thing. It keeps us safe and alive which is the brain's whole job, its whole goal is to keep us safe and alive. When we see a bear in the distance, our brain knows without a shadow of a doubt that we're in danger. It doesn't even have to think twice. And that's great. And this is not so helpful in most modern instances, even if it feels like it is helpful. In most modern day instances, our brains don't need to think in such black and white judgments, because in most modern day instances, we're rarely faced with true life or death situations. So our brain doesn't have to be so fucking dramatic. Our brain considers our asshole boss who's yelling at us on the same threat level that it considers a bear off in the distance. And that's not so helpful. This is where practicing non-judgment really works on our behalf. Acknowledging the ways that our brain automatically sorts things into very black or white categories, recognizing that we do this to feel more safe and to feel like we know what's going on, and recognizing that in many ways, the majority of the time, these judgments are presumptuous. They're based out of fear, out of our need for survival, out of our need to feel like we know everything. Right? So again, we ask yourself, what are you holding on to that may be untrue or unfair or holding you back from evolving into a higher state of being? What beliefs and systems and feelings and patterns are you holding on to that may be holding you back from this sacred rebirthing process that we see in this card? What are you refusing to let die, to liberate yourself from? The symbolism on this card This card obviously has imagery that's very heavily related to the Christian idea of Judgment Day. We see an angel blowing their horn, awakening souls from the grave and calling them to prepare to ascend to heaven. This is like the preparation to ascend to heaven. So we see the symbolism of an awakening, a reckoning. So we see through death and the tower and judgment how important it is to have a very empowered, careful, healthy relationship with things like attachment and control, and having an empowered relationship with letting go. And letting go can be an intentional act, or it can be something that we're kind of forced into, right? We get to choose. We get to be very awake and conscious of where we are in our cycles, the things that we have outgrown and let go of. Many things. Each of us have outgrown and let go of many things, whether we were kind of forced into it or whether we really empowered ourselves to make that choice, whether we accept it or not. We've been through this. So how would you like to go through this sort of thing in the future? Now, briefly on the Suit of Cups, I pulled them out of my deck. The Suit of Cups, let me just, the aces. Love the Five of Cups, the Ten of Cups. The Suit of Cups is all about our emotional center, our hearts. The Suit of Cups invites us to love ourselves, being intimate and vulnerable with ourselves, choosing ourselves over and over and over again, choosing to fully allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling. It all comes back to us. At the end of the day, even if we're working in themes of relationships or partnership or romantic relationships, it all comes back to us, right? So the cups are a reminder that no one can really give us anything that we can't give ourselves. The cliche is true. We must love ourselves in order to accept love from outside of ourselves. I remember being younger and hoping that that wasn't true because I so badly wanted to experience and feel love. And I would hear that you have to love yourself before you can accept love from others. And I'd be like, no, trust me, I can accept love from others. Just bring it on. Like, I'll show you. I'll accept it. But it's true. The cups remind us to provide those things that we're seeking and needing to ourselves. What fills your cup? What nourishes your heart? What feels hard to love about yourself? Reclaim a connection to yourself. Loving the self, checking in with the self, honoring our intuitive knowing, allowing grief and allowing contentedness as they arise, allowing what is happening, being in relationship with the heart and our emotions, whatever that looks like. Whatever that looks like. So, for example, the Four of Cups is commonly considered a message that we're missing something. We're being kind of obstinate. We're ignoring the obvious. Like, hello, there's a fourth cup right in front of you. You just got to reach out and take it. And that can be true. But we can take that a little bit deeper and really be with this being. This being is so focused on these other three cups that they're not ready. They're not taking it. If they were ready, If they felt ready, if they felt like they needed that cup, they would take it. But for whatever reason, it doesn't feel right. For whatever reason, they're just not there. And I think it's much more helpful to look at that piece of it rather than the just reach out, dummy. There's a cup right there. The universe is giving it to you. That might be true. And is that the most helpful message to take from this? Or is it more helpful to look at like, well, what's going on beneath that? That is true. And what's going on here? That cup will be there. That cup will be there when you're ready. Why aren't you ready yet? What is it about these cups that maybe you don't feel, you don't have enough, like you don't feel ready to carry 4 cups. You feel like 3 cups is too many cups. There can be a lot more explored there. So I love that invitation from the Cups cards to just really love and honor and check in with, be with what is going on. What is going on beneath the surface? What's going on in our hearts? And coming up in Expansive Astrology next week, we're going to be talking about connecting with those parts of ourselves a little more. We're going to be talking about connecting with our intuition. Dropping into those deepest parts of ourselves, having a little more comfort with vulnerability, knowing what to do with those parts of ourselves. Yeah. So that's Scorpio season. That's Scorpio season through the lens of the tarot. I really hope that this served. Sorry, I just pet my dog and he's shedding. I really hope this served. Let me know. Comment down below. Let me know how you're feeling about these topics. Like I said in the beginning, like these are big opportunities. This is pretty big work. So I'd love to support you. You know, there are a million ways to reach out, and I'm happy to support you through some of this or talk through some of this. Let me know. Thank you so much for being here. I really hope that this served. I like this week. It's intense stuff. It's certainly different than like Leo season, the tarot week in Leo season, where we're talking about shining and like being with our hearts, and it's a little more intense than that this week. And I think empowering ourselves around these topics, I don't want to say it makes it easier, but it feels so fucking good, right? To empower ourselves around these sorts of topics. So I hope that's what's landing for you. I hope that's what's resonating for you. If you like what I'm doing here, please subscribe. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you like. Let me know if there's anything that you feel like is missing. Do you have an interpretation of any of these cards or any of these energies that I didn't mention? Good. I hope you do, and I'd love to hear it. Please let me know. If you like what I'm doing, subscribe, hit the like button. It really, really helps. I'm trying to build this community, get this sort of empowerment into more hands and more brains and more hearts. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. I will see you next week. Take good care of yourselves. Bye.